Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane, so glad you could join me. Well, this has been a video that's been in the works for a while now, and I'm so glad you could join me with it. And first off, the Mandela Effect is a trigger for wanderers, bringers of light, volunteers, if you will. I've created a video about this. It's right up here. You can go check that out. And if you actually stumbled across this video because you're not quite a believer in the Mandela Effect yet, and you're just trying to get more information about it, I recommend a good video for tips of seeing some of the effects. You can visit this right up here, and that'll help you along that avenue. Also, if I'm going to get back to that analogy with the way Jesus used water to describe God, because how do you describe something that's everywhere all the time and you've sort of never experienced the time when it wasn't there? So I'm going to get back to that parable of the fishes that use some examples from that in a previous video. If you haven't seen that, I recommend you see it. It's a short video. It's also right up here. And I'm also going to get into some, if you're mainstream Christian, you might have some difficulties with some of the information. And the reason it's taken so long to come out with this video is because I needed to prepare the viewers for the information. And a good video if you're sort of still mainstream Christian but you've been affected by the Mandela Effect. I got a video right up here. It's called Mandela Effect: Affected Christians Getting Back to Jesus' Message, and that's a really good one. And as sort of a follow-up, the end screen of that one, there's a video available called Mandela Effect: Bible Changes Are a Good Thing, or you can click that right up here as well. So now that I got all that out of the way, let's talk about the topics in this particular installment here. I'm going to be talking about earth changes, of course, Jesus, some of the information on how he was able to be such a superhero of a human, the law of one, which is where a lot of this material comes from, and steps to using your gifts of healing. Now, I believe these steps actually pretty much apply for the most part, many of the parts of the steps anyway will apply for probably any spiritual gift, I would think. But this is catered to the healing because that's just how it's presented. But you'll see what I mean once we get into it, by how it seems like it's sort of a comprehensive step-by-step of how you actually tap into the love light, the light love, the intelligent infinity, if you will. And that gets into the whole law of one, which I go over a part in this text that will actually explain that, because the law of one states all things are really one, and that gets into the whole water thing. And I had one viewer that was really upset because she said, how can you say I'm the same thing as this other person? And you know what, understanding this is really important to being able to tap into those gifts, because we're living in an illusion here, a distorted reality, and you have to rise above that to see the truth before you can really tap into these otherworldly gifts, if you will. And Jesus was able to do that, and that's one of the reasons why I thought it was really important to bring out the video about Jesus first, because it's not that I'm against believing that he died as an atoning death for you. It's just that he's been portrayed in such a way that he lived this perfect sin-free life, and What he did, we can't do. But in the words of Jesus, we would do the things he did and greater. So why would he say that if he wasn't the same as us? I believe he led by example. And you'll see how there were some events in his life that propelled him into being the person that he became, that we think of as a superhero that we can't be like, but we can. And he showed us the way, and there's steps involved, and let's get right into it here. So, if I'm gonna start with, let me see if this has the numbers, if it saved the numbers in here. It did. Now you can go to the lawofone.info. I will leave a link in the description so you guys, if you want to, because I did cut out some redundancies here, just a few, not a lot, but where he started one question, switched it to something else, and things like that. And then it looks like I started this in the middle of a question for some reason. That might be the one I'm thinking of. But as I go along here, you can see on the side, it'll have this number here. Let me scoot this over a tad bit here. And you can actually go to that session at the lawofone.info website and read it for yourself if you want. But we're going to basically be in the 17 session, and then it gets into, I think, 4, 5, and 6. So just so you know. And just to make sure this runs a little smoother, let me go full here and make sure you can see everything. Alright, so the questioner asks, will the effects of the fourth density increase in the next 30 years? This is back in 1981. So we are right at that, right actually about 5 or 6 years past the time that this all began. That's why this is important, and I believe that's why the whole Mandela Effect's happening. So the time they're talking about is now. We're actually in the time. It's already began, and this is what we're looking at here. Will the effects of the fourth density increase in the next 30 years? Will we see more changes in our environment and our effect upon our environment? Ra, if you're new to the Law of One, they're communicating through someone that's being hypnotized, and it's really important, just like if you're in a chat room, to see who's speaking. I don't know if it's possible that the message can be intercepted or what the deal is, but they always state, because Ra is actually a social memory complex, so it's like a group, and they always state Ra, or I am Ra, but it's not to, I can understand it sort of sounding like I am Ra and sounding like this sort of holy or God-like being, but they consider themselves to be our brothers and sisters, know better than us, just more experience with information that we need. So don't get hung up on the I am Ra part, because I do know how it sounds at first. But I am Ra, the fourth density, is a vibrational spectrum. Your time-space continuum has spiraled your planetary sphere and your what we would call galaxy, what you call star, into this vibration. This will cause the planetary sphere itself to electromagnetically realign its vortices of reception of the in-streaming of cosmic forces, expressing themselves as vibrational webs, so that the Earth will thus be fourth density magnetized, as you might call it. This is going to occur with some inconvenience, as we have said before, due to the energies of the thought forms of your peoples, which disturb the orderly construct of the energy patterns within your Earth spirals of energy, which increase entropy and unusable heat. This will cause your planetary sphere to have some ruptures in its outer garment while making itself appropriately magnetized for fourth density. This is the planetary adjustment. This could be explaining why we see so many changes with the Mandela effect with geography, and maybe land is getting pushed up from underneath, but that I guess doesn't explain why it appears to have always been there either. So, and also, if you're a flat Earth person, please don't get hung up on the fact that he's saying planetary sphere, because just like somebody might use sphere of influence, they also use plane of existence and stuff like that sometimes too. So don't just throw out all the information. You're like, oh, he's saying sphere, it must be a lie. Um, because I found that I've had people leave comments like that. Um, but anyway, there will also be a sharp increase in the short run of negatively oriented or polarized mind, body, spirit complexes and social complexes due to the polarizing conditions of the sharp delineation between fourth density characteristics and third density self-service orientation. Those who remain in fourth density upon this plane will be of the so-called positive orientation. Many will come from elsewhere, for it would appear that with all of the best efforts of the Confederation, which includes those from your people's inner planes, inner civilizations, and those from other dimensions, the harvest will still be much less than that which this planetary sphere is capable of comfortably supporting in service. Questioner asks, It is possible to help is it possible to help an entity to reach fourth density level in these last days? I am Ra. It is impossible to help another being directly. It is only possible to make catalysts available in whatever form, the most important being the radiation of realization of oneness with the Creator from the Self, less important being information such as we share with you. We ourselves do not feel an urgency for this information to be widely disseminated. It is enough that we have made it available to 3, 4, or 5. This is extremely ample reward, for if one of these obtains fourth density understanding due to this catalyst, then we shall have fulfilled the law of one in the distortion of service. We encourage a dispassionate attempt to share information without concern for numbers or quick growth among others. That you attempt to make this information available is, in your term, your service. The attempt, if it reaches one, reaches all. We cannot offer shortcuts to enlightenment. Enlightenment is of the moment, is an opening to intelligent infinity. It can only be accomplished by the self for the self. Another self cannot teach, learn enlightenment, but only teach, learn information, inspiration, or a sharing of love, of mystery, of the unknown that makes the other self reach out and begin the seeking process that ends in a moment. But one can know when an entity will open, but who can know when an entity will open the gate to the present? Now we're back in that present moment thing we've talked about before. Whenever you see for some reason their terminology, they like to use both sides of a coin, so to speak. And usually the first one is what is first happening. So like here in this instance, they're talking about teach and learn. So really talking about teach and someone learning. So they give this sort of polarized terminology quite a bit. So if they're talking about, I think there was another spot where they used it. But just keep in mind that the first one, that it's a relationship. It's motion. Someone teaches, someone learns from someone teaching. So if they had put it in the opposite way, they'd be talking about the person that's learning. Questioner, can you tell me if Jesus of Nazareth came from the Confederation before incarnation here? The Confederation is the good group, and the Orion group is the bad group, in case it comes up. You haven't seen the other video. I am Ra, the one known to you as Jesus of Nazareth, did not have a name. This entity was a member of fourth density of the highest level of that suboctave. This entity was desirous of entering this planetary sphere in order to share the love vibration in as pure a manner as possible. Thus, this entity received permission to perform this mission. This entity was then a wanderer of no name, of Confederation origins, of fourth density, representing the fourth density understanding of the vibration of understanding or love. This entity could have gone on to the fifth, but chose instead to return to the third for this particular mission. This entity was of the highest suboctave of the vibration of love. This is fourth density. This is actually the level we're trying to achieve and that we're going into right now. It's fourth density. Questioner: when I am communicating with you as Ra, are you at times an individualized entity, or am I speaking to the entire complex? I am Ra. You speak with Ra. There is no separation. You would call it a social memory complex, thus indicating many-ness. To our understanding, you are speaking to an individualized portion of consciousness. Questioner: I would like to make a point clear now that I am sure of myself. People of this planet, following any religion or no religion at all, or having no intellectual knowledge of the law of one or of anything at all, can still be harvested into the fourth density if they are of that vibration. Is that not correct? I am Ra. This is correct. However, you will find few who are harvestable, whose radiance does not cause others to be aware of their, what you may call, spirituality. The quality of the mind-body-spirit complex distortion. Thus, it is not particularly probable that an entity would be completely unknown to his immediate acquaintances as an unusually radiant personality, even were this individual not caught up in any of the distortions of your so-called religious systems. So it's basically saying you can recognize harvestable individuals, whether they're in religion or not, if they have this sort of outgoing, loving personality. Questioner: then if the entity Jesus was fourth density, and there are wanderers on the planet today who came from fifth and sixth density, what was it that Jesus did that enabled him to be such a good healer? And could these fifth and sixth density beings here today do the same? I am Ra. Those who heal may be of any density which has the consciousness of the spirit. This includes third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh. The third density can be one in which healing takes place just as the others. However, there is more illusory material to understand, to balance, to accept, and to move forward from. The gate to intelligent infinity can only be opened when an understanding of the in-streamings of intelligent energy are opened unto the healer. These are the so-called natural laws of your local space-time continuum and its web of electromagnetic sources, or nexi, of in-streaming energy. Know then, first, the mind and the body. Then as the spirit is integrated and synthesized, those are harmonized into a mind-body-spirit complex which can move among the dimensions and which can open the gateway to intelligent infinity, thus healing self by light and sharing that light with others. True healing is simply the radiance of the self causing an environment in which a catalyst may occur which initiates the recognition of self by self, of the self-healing properties of the self. Now this is where we're getting to I want to reiterate the fact that it's going to bring out some stuff about Jesus that, if you guys are thinking that he lived the perfect sin-free life, this might upset you, but I want you to know that this is extremely important to understand why these things happened with Jesus and how he was able to propel himself into the person he was going to be. So please listen with an open mind. If you haven't watched the other videos, I recommend it. Questioner: how did Jesus learn this during his incarnation? I am Ra. This entity learned the ability by a natural kind of remembering at a very young age. Unfortunately, this entity first discovered his ability to penetrate intelligent infinity by becoming the distortion you call angry at a playmate. This entity was touched by the entity known as Jesus to you and was fatally wounded. Thus, the one known as Jesus became aware that there dwelt in him a terrible potential. This entity determined to discover how to use this energy for good, not for the negative. This entity was extremely positively polarized and remembered more than most wanderers do. So this is the key to why Jesus was able to do that. Something traumatic happened to him. I'd heard there was a show called it was on the History Channel. It was called Banned from the Bible, and there was some infancy gospels. I believe infancy gospel of Thomas, where it talks about Jesus had pushed a playmate off the roof, or was suspected of pushing a playmate off the roof, but then raised him from the dead so that he could tell them that he didn't do that. But that was a really late addition, and I believe that someone might have tried to cover up what happened to turn it into more of a miraculous thing that happened, because I'd heard about that a while back, and I'd forgot that he said he didn't do it and then he raised him from the dead. But I wanted to clarify that because of mentioning it before. So let's go back to the screen here. Let's see. So the questioner asked, how did this aggressive action against the playmate affect Jesus and his spiritual growth? Where did he go after his physical death? I am Ra. The entity you call Jesus was galvanized by this experience and began a lifetime of seeking and searching. This entity studied first day and night in its own religious constructs, which you call Judaism, and was learned enough to be a rabbi, as you call the teach learners of this particular rhythm or distortion of understanding at a very young age. At the age of approximately 13 and 1/2 of your years, this entity left the dwelling place of its earthly family, as you would call it, and walked into many other places seeking further information. This went on sporadically until the entity was approximately 25, at which time it returned to its family dwelling and learned and practiced the art of its earthly father, which was a carpenter, just as we already knew. When the entity had become able to integrate or synthesize all experiences, the entity began to speak to other selves and teach learn what it had felt during the preceding years to be of a worthwhile nature. The entity was absolved karmically of the destruction of an other self when it was in its last portion of lifetime, and spoke upon what you would call a cross, saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the will of action, or what you call karma. Questioner: then in which density does the entity known as Jesus now reside? I am Ra. The information is harmless, though unimportant. This entity studies now the lessons of the wisdom vibration, the 5th density, also called the light vibration. Questioner: in our culture there's a great saying that he will return. Can you tell me if this is planned? I am Ra. I will attempt to sort out this question. It is difficult. This entity became aware that it was not an entity of itself, but operated as a messenger of the one creator whom this entity saw as love. This entity was aware that the cycle was in its last portion and spoke to the effect that those of its consciousness would return at the harvest. The particular mind-body-spirit complex you call Jesus is as what you would call an entity not to return except as a member of the Confederation, occasionally speaking through a channel. However, there are others of the identical congruency of consciousness that will welcome those to the fourth density. This is the meaning of the returning. Questioner: can you tell me why the Earth will be fourth density positive instead of fourth density negative after the cycle is complete, since it seems that there is a great negative population? I am Ra. The Earth seems to be negative. That is due to the quiet, shall we say, horror, which is the common distortion which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences which are of your space-time presence. However, those oriented and harvestable in the ways of service to others greatly outnumber those whose orientation towards service to self has become that of harvestable quality. In other words, the questioner asks, in other words, there will be fewer negative entities being harvested into fourth density than there will be positive. Is that correct? I am Ra. This is correct. The great majority of your peoples will repeat third density. So, that's kind of, on one hand, that's upsetting because, most people are going to stay in the cycle. But on the other hand, we've been taught that, at least as a Christian, that people are going to burn forever in hell. And that was going to be what they were going to receive. But it's not. They just got to do it over again until they get it right. And according to the Dolores Cannon material, Earth will no longer be inhabited by third density. So at least the fourth density Earth won't. So they'll have to continue on another planet or a third density split off of Earth, depending on how you view that. Alright, so now we get into what the Law of One is and how to access the healing. Questioner: my objective is primarily to discover more of the Law of One, and it would be very helpful to discover techniques of healing. I am aware of your problem with respect to free will. You cannot make suggestions, so I will ask you if you can state the Law of One and the laws of healing to me. I am Ra. The Law of One, though beyond the limitations of name, as you call vibratory sound complexes, may be approximated by stating that all things are one, that there is no polarity, no right or wrong, no disharmony, but only identity. All is one, and that one is love, light, love, the infinite creator. Let me take a pause and reiterate the fact of the way Jesus, as we go through these steps, you'll see how Jesus, being aware of his great potential for evil or negative, is how he was able to sort of balance out or cancel out the distortions of our reality that we live in. So where I had the one viewer that was upset saying, I'm not the same as this evil person, but you don't have to think you're the same as that evil person. You have to accept that you could be the same as that evil person. You have the potential to be as bad as the worst person you can imagine. You just weren't put in those same circumstances. You didn't go through the same catalyst that drove that person to be the ultimate evil person that you have in your mind. So it's not thinking of yourself as one like you are that person, but the potential is there to be a monster, not that you are a monster. So that's a distinction I want to make with the whole water thing. You can totally imagine pouring out glasses of water. One of them stays crystal clear, one of them gets moldy. It's still water, and it still came from one source. Okay. One of the primal distortions of the law of one is that of healing. Healing occurs when a mind-body-spirit complex realizes deep within itself the law of one. That is, that there is no disharmony, no imperfection, that all is complete and whole and perfect. Thus, the intelligent infinity within this mind-body-spirit complex reforms the illusion of body, mind, or spirit to form congruent with the law of one. The healer acts as energizer or catalyst for this completely individual process. That will make more sense as we get into this here. One item which may be of interest is that a healer asking to learn must take the distortion understood as responsibility for that asking receiving, thus healing. This is an honor duty which must be carefully considered in free will before the asking. Questioner: the last time we communicated, we were speaking of learning of healing. This was a new session, so it's really continued, but okay. It is my impression that from what you gave to us in the earlier session, that it is necessary to first purify the self by certain disciplines and exercises. Then in order to heal a patient, it is necessary, by example, and possibly certain exercises, to create a mental configuration in the patient that allows him to heal himself. Am I correct? I am Ra. Although your learn understanding distortion is essentially correct, your choice of vibratory sound complex, which that just means word, is not entirely as accurate as this language allows. It is not by example that the healer does the working. The working exists in and of itself. The healer is only the catalyst. Much as this instrument has the catalysts necessary to provide the channel for our words, yet by example or exercise of any kind can take no thought for this working. The healing working is congruent in that it is a form of channeling some distortion of the intelligent infinity. Questioner: we have decided to accept, if offered, the honor duty of learning, teaching the healing process. I would ask as to the first step which we should accomplish in becoming effective healers. I am Ra. We shall begin with the first of the three teachings, learnings. Alright, this is getting into it. This is the cool stuff right here. We begin with the mental learned teaching necessary for contact with intelligent infinity. Now you can see there, that's why I said I believe this would be steps for doing any kind of spiritual work, because you've got to first contact intelligent infinity, whether you're healing or channeling or anything like that. So this information has broader reach than just healing. The prerequisite of the mental work is the ability to retain silence of self. This is the left brain at a steady state when required by the self. The mind must be open like a door. The key is silence. Now, to me, that's so discouraging. If anybody has been meditating for a while and you have tips on this, silencing the mind, because I cannot ever get my mind to shut the heck up, I feel like. So I get to step one and I'm like, oh, great. But anyway, the key is silence. Within the door lies a hierarchical construction you may liken unto geography, and in some ways geometry. For the hierarchy is quite regular, bearing inner relationships. To begin to master the concept of mental discipline, it is necessary to examine the self. The polarity of your dimension must be internalized. Where you find patience within your mind, you must consciously find the corresponding impatience, and vice versa. Each thought that a being has in its turn an antithesis. So each thought you have to find its polar opposite. The disciplines of the mind involve, first of all, identifying both those things of which you approve and those things of which you disapprove within yourself. Much like I was saying about Jesus realizing his potential to do bad. And then balancing each and every positive and negative charge with its equal. The mind contains all things, therefore, you must discover this completeness within yourself. This all makes sense. The second mental discipline is acceptance of the completeness within your consciousness. It is not for a being of polarity in the physical consciousness to pick and choose among attributes, thus building the roles that cause blockages and confusions in the already distorted mind complex. Each acceptance smooths part of the many distortions that the faculty you call judgment engenders. The third discipline of the mind is a repetition of the first, but with the gaze outward towards the fellow entities that it meets. In each entity there exists completeness. Thus, the ability to understand each balance is necessary. When you view patience, you are responsible for mirroring in your mental understanding patience and patience. When you view impatience, it is necessary for your mental configuration of understanding to be impatience, patience. We use this as a simple example. Most configurations of mind have many facets, an understanding of either self-polarities or what you would call other self-polarities, can and must be understood as subtle work. So now we see that we have to sort of smooth out the positives and negatives within ourselves and see that we are complete and one with the infinite creator. And then we must look at others in the same exact way and see that others have the potential for good, the potential for evil, the potential for both sides of the coin of every aspect of life, basically. So once you do it with yourself and then you do it with others, the next step is the acceptance of the other self-polarities, which mirrors the second step. These are the first 4 steps of learning mental discipline. The 5th step involves observing the geographical or geometrical relationships and ratios of the mind, the other mind, the mass mind, and the infinite mind. The second area of learned teaching is the study understanding of the body complexes. It is necessary to know your body well. This is a matter of using the mind to examine how the feelings, the biases, what you would call the emotions, affect various portions of the body complex. It shall be necessary to both understand the bodily polarities and to accept them, repeating in a chemical, physical manifestation the work you have done upon the mind, bethinking the consciousness. The body is a creature of the mind's creation. It has its biases. The biological bias must first completely must be first completely understood, and then the opposite bias allowed to find full expression and understanding. Again, the process of acceptance of the body as a balanced as well as polarized individual may then be accomplished. It is then the task to extend this understanding to the bodies of the other selves whom you will meet. The simplest example of this is the understanding that each biological male is female, each biological female is male. This is a simple example. However, in almost every case wherein you are attempting the understanding of the body of self or other self, you will again find that the most subtle discernment is necessary in order to fully grasp the polarity complexes involved. At this time, we would suggest closing the description until the next time of work so that we may devote time to the third area commensurate with its importance. We can answer a query if it is a short one before we leave this instrument. Okay, that was the end of that. The next session. Questioner asked, we would like to continue the material from yesterday. We had to cease before it was inaudible. Okay, Ra says, this is well with us. We proceed now with the third area of teach learning concerning the development of the energy powers of healing. The third area is the spiritual complex, which embodies the fields of force and consciousness, which are the least distorted of your mind-body-spirit complex. The exploration and balancing of the spirit complex is indeed the longest and most subtle part of your learned teaching. We have considered the mind as a tree. The mind controls the body. With the mind single-pointed, balanced, and aware, the body comfortable in whatever biases and distortions make it appropriately balanced for that instrument. The instrument is then ready to proceed with the great work. That is the work of wind and fire. The spiritual body energy field is a pathway or channel. When body and mind are receptive and open, then the spirit can become a functioning shuttle or communicator from the entity's individual energy of will upwards, and from the streamings of the creative fire and wind downwards. So all of that first part was simply to just get your mind and body out of the way so your spirit can channel in these godlike energies. And to get them out of the way, you have to remove the distortions of this reality, which is that of being individuals and having all these different biases. So it sounds easy, sounds simple, but I don't. It does sound like it would require some time and effort. Okay, the healing ability, like all others, what this instrument would call paranormal abilities, is affected by the opening of a pathway or shuttle into intelligent infinity. There are many upon your plane who have a random hole or gateway in their spirit energy field, sometimes created by the ingestion of chemicals such as what this instrument would call LSD, who are able, randomly and without control, to tap into energy sources. They may or may not be entities who wish to serve. The purpose of carefully and consciously opening this channel is to serve in a more dependable way, in a more commonplace or usual way, as seen by the distortion complex of the healer. To others, there may appear to be miracles. To the one who has carefully opened the door to intelligent infinity, this is ordinary. This is commonplace. This is as it should be. The life experience becomes somewhat transformed, and the great work goes on. At this time, we feel these exercises suffice for your beginning. We will, at a future time, when you feel you have accomplished that which is set before you, begin to guide you into a more precise understanding of the functions and uses of this gateway in the experience of healing. So this was a long one, but there's a lot of information in here, and I will figure out the time that I start the steps and add it to the description. So if you want to go back over just the portions of it that are just going over what you need to do, you can quickly add this to your watch later list and come back and hit that portion, or you can go read it for yourself. I believe that the portions, if you go to the law1.info, the what did I typed in intelligent infinity and made it come up just by searching it, and then searching by session rather than relevance will put it in order for you. And also searching for all words or exact phrase rather than just anytime either one shows up will bring up pretty much the same thing I've got going on here. But you can see it was mainly started at 4 and went into 5 and 6, and they're not really long sessions at all. So that will conclude this very long installment, but I hope you all enjoyed that. I'm going to look more into this. I don't think they ever return back to the subject, so I don't think we're going to get any, but maybe I just, I did fall asleep a few times listening to it, and I try to go back. I could have missed something, but it's kind of hard to listen to with all of the terminology being so different than the way we talk. So, so anyway, I do appreciate you all watching. Don't forget to add this to your watch later list, though, so you can check back with this information if you want to go over it. And if you liked it, hit the like button, and please subscribe if you haven't already, because I do have more information just like this coming down the pipe. So have a great day. Thanks for watching.